Thank you. Thank you, John, for that warm introduction. And the Bay Planning Commission is very lucky to have, the coalition is very lucky to have John as an advocate. He's been back to Washington, D.C., trumpeting the cause. And with so many issues out there on the federal agenda, you really sometimes have to just continue to speak louder into the microphone on those issues. You have to go to Washington and let your elected officials know what's important. And I have to credit John. He is constantly doing that. We're actually friends on GChat, so John will actually find me on GChat sometimes, and we've communicated that way. So he's effective. He'll get me everywhere he can find me to put forward the issues of the Bay Area. Now, Dr. Anderson was interrupted by those trains that were coming through, and I was a little nervous, and then I realized another train is going to probably come through, but I have experience with those trains. Back in 2006, I took the California bar exam, took all of my savings at that point, having worked through law school, to pay for the bar prep course, and also to pay for living 2 months unpaid to study for the exam. And I forgot to budget in that I would have to spend a couple of nights in Oakland to take the exam, because they advised not to rely on freeway traffic or BART to get there. Anything could happen. You don't want to miss it. So all of my friends who had studied for the exam stayed at the nice, lush Oakland Marriott right in the same building that the bar exam was in. I realized, well, I certainly had not budgeted to stay at the Oakland Marriott. The only hotel that was available was the Jack London Inn, which is literally just a pitching wedge from here, and it sits right on top of those train tracks. So the first night before the exam, 4 a.m. in the morning, that train just came, rushing through, and that jolted me and woke me up, and I had to deal with that every night. So I think having dealt with that to take and pass the bar exam, I could probably deal with it during the speech. But I just came to my first 100 days in the United States Congress. It's been a thrilling experience. I'm very mindful, though, of where I came from, and that is having been a congressional intern. I was an intern back in 2001 for Congresswoman Ellen Tauscher. And even today, when I walk through the halls of Congress, or I walk up to the elevator and I see the elevator that says members only, I still feel like I'm doing something wrong if I get in the elevator. I look around a little bit just to make sure it's okay. But it's been quite a pleasure. 11 years ago, when I was there as an intern to take an unpaid internship, I worked in the morning from about 5:30 to 8:30, handing out gym towels at this little gym on Capitol Hill. Oftentimes, members of Congress would come in. I'd give them their gym towels. And then once the internship ended in the evening, I'd go back down Capitol Hill, where I worked at a little Mexican restaurant called Tortilla Coast, and I would serve meals to members of Congress, and learned very early on that the best way to get the biggest tips was to recognize them by name. It may come as a big surprise to you that members of Congress have very, very big egos. So it helped me a lot to know them by name. So there I was. I'd serve them gym towels in the morning, serve them meals in the evening, and had no idea that 11 years later I'd be serving with them in the halls of Congress. But it's been a real ride so far. But one thing I have learned, having looked at our country and our area, is that our middle class is really suffering. If you look at all of the numbers, all of the indicators, they show that over the last 10 years, the middle class and the median income has gone down. It's actually gone down by about $4,000. People in the middle class are earning $4,000 less today than they were 10 years ago. Debt, people today, as compared to 10 years ago, have about $20,000 more in household debt if you're in the middle class. Disposable income has never been lower than the 1960s if you're in the middle class. Unemployment is 3 points higher if you're in our middle class. So fighting for the middle class, having been someone who came from the middle class growing up in Dublin, I know that a vibrant, thriving middle class has to be a part of America's economy. And fortunately, our area, because of what many of you do, can help see that middle class begin to grow again. And I believe that enabling innovation expands our middle class. And we come from an area that rewards people who take risks, who understand that we have a culture in California of try, fail, try, Google. That's the culture, that is the spirit that is going to continue to power our economy forward, and that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit here today. Many companies and organizations in this room are innovative, and they've been doing that with remarkable results. But the federal government should not be getting in the way or slowing down innovation. And right now, I believe we need to get business and government on the same page. Otherwise, we're going to see financial markets continue to lose confidence in the government's ability to work with business and grow and create jobs. We also need to, and I support the president's plan, to double our exports over the next 5 years. We know that in our country, we have a trade deficit. Every month, we bring in more goods and services by about $40 billion than what we are sending out. And it's encouraging that we're starting to narrow that deficit, but this area can really lead the way, but it needs a government that's going to work with the business community to make that happen. And the end goal has to be that we're growing that middle class and ladders of opportunity for folks to come into the middle class. This, to me, means that we have to look at what we're doing to first invest in our children who are going to be competing for jobs, but also the current workforce, people who are in the workforce right now and are unemployed or long-term unemployed. So first, we need to allow companies to continue to be more competitive. We have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world, and I support, and it was encouraging to see during the presidential debates that both President Obama and candidate Romney, in a bipartisan effort, supported bringing down those corporate tax rates. And I support that too, as long as we can have ways to ensure that if we bring down that corporate tax rate, we eliminate a lot of the incentives to send jobs overseas and tie that incentives to creating jobs here in America. I think that will help us double our exports and create more jobs. I was at a roundtable a couple of weeks ago back in Washington, D.C., and there were representatives at that roundtable from Google, Microsoft, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, Oracle, Facebook. And I asked each person at the table, how many unfilled jobs do you have right now in the Valley, in our area? We went around the room, 1,000, 2,500, 500, 2,000. By the time we were done, we had found over 20,000 unfilled jobs that companies in Silicon Valley were trying to fill, trying to put here in our area, but could not fill because they didn't have a skilled workforce. So there's a knowledge gap. There's a workforce training gap right now that exists. And so they're faced with two options. Neither of them are very good. One, they can send all of those jobs overseas, and we don't realize any of the jobs here. It doesn't help our economy. Or they could continue to lobby to increase the number of H-1B visas in our country. Now, I think we actually need to increase the number of H-1B visas. Right now, there are about 65,000. And when they become open in April, they're only available for about the first 4 days. The entire country, 65,000 high-skilled work visas available. So we need to increase that. But that solves the short-term problem. The long-term problem really comes down to who's going to be competing in the workforce, our children. And we are seeing all of the metrics show that in science, technology, engineering, and math, our children are performing at about the middle compared to other first world countries. So we need to make sure that we are enabling our teachers to equip our students with the skills they're going to need to compete and thrive in this changing global economy. Now, I'm excited that the committees that I serve on allow me to do this. I get to play a little bit of offense and defense on both sides of the balls with the two committees that I serve on. The first is the Committee on Science and Technology. And that committee I serve as the ranking member of the Energy Subcommittee, and we are working on that committee to allow our students to really have those STEM skills, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, those skills in the classroom, and encouraging and providing grants and research dollars to our universities and teachers so that they can prepare our students to start learning that way. Wayne Gretzky used to always say that the reason he scored so many goals was not because he skated to the puck, he skated to where the puck was going to be. And if our country is going to increase those exports, grow our middle class, I think the puck is going to be in advanced manufacturing, health information systems, tech sectors, and the like. And we need to make sure that our teachers are getting our children to the puck so that they can do that. And it's exciting to participate in that on the Science and Technology Committee. The other committee that I serve on is very important to what the coalition does, and that's the Committee on Homeland Security. In that capacity, we work to protect the homeland. We work with the Coast Guard, which is the only military branch that also has jurisdiction in a civilian agency under the Department of Homeland Security. We also work to protect our cyber networks. But with respect to our ports and our waterways, this era of sequestration is not helping. We know that we have threats and we are vulnerable to an attack to one of our bridges, our tunnels, or our BART infrastructure. However, because of sequestration, these mandatory government cuts, we've been reading in the news lately that the Coast Guard is going to be reducing patrols of our waterways and the Bay Bridge. We know that we are going to see fewer and fewer Homeland Security dollars go out to the grant programs that prepared cities like Boston for their emergency preparedness. So that's going to hurt us, and it's going to make our infrastructure more vulnerable, and we know that if we do not have national security, we certainly do not have economic security. And so we're learning from Boston just how vulnerable we are, starting to appreciate again that threats against our country are real, and hopefully that will allow us to invest more in our homeland security and our transit security grant programs. Been working with BART and other agencies. We put in a request to increase greatly the transit security grant program that the Department of Homeland Security has, which allows us to protect our critical transportation infrastructure, and happy to talk with any of you offline if you would like to learn more about that application process and, of course, how we can help. The innovation agenda has to start here at home, and I have talked a lot about Made in America jobs, and the first bill that I introduced is called the Main Street Revival Act. And although we have an innovation sector here in the Tri-Valley, in northern Silicon Valley, which is a part of my congressional district, we also have areas that really have been economically depressed and need investment. My first bill allows any small business that goes into an economically depressed area to receive a tax deferral on their employer contributions. So employers contribute to the payroll tax, which is Medicare and Social Security. So I learned from my campaign going Main Street door to Main Street door that businesses are being hurt by vacancies around them, that it's hurting foot traffic, it's hurting business-to-business transactions, and that the best thing the federal government could do to really stimulate activity in those areas would be to defer payroll taxes. And so they would have to be paid back over time, but in that critical year, that startup year, and I know a thing or two about startups, I see myself as a startup congressman, but in that startup year, businesses need to focus on hiring, they need to focus on getting a business plan, getting their business off the ground so that they can create that foot traffic and also purchase in those business-to-business transactions. So we're saying the federal government gets out of the way for the first year, receives the money on the back end in years 2, 3, and 4, that would help stimulate activity. Now, in this Congress, things are gridlocked, and we know that not much is moving. We know that with WRDA, we know that with MAP 21 and other transportation projects, that gridlock is preventing movement. So when I was looking for co-sponsors, I knew it would be very easy to go out and find Democratic co-sponsors. It's not hard if you're a Democrat to ask other Democratic members to sign on to your bill. The challenge in this Congress is working across the aisle and finding members of the other party who are willing to sign on to you. Everybody has this fear right now of being ambushed. Like if I reach out to a Republican, that Republican, he or she signs on, that would be used against them in a primary election, meaning somebody in their own party saying, he's working too closely with Democrats, we're here to, advance our agenda, and then that person's taken out in a primary. There's a real fear in the Congress of that. So we were patient. We didn't accept any Democratic co-sponsors. We went after Republicans because we wanted the bill to actually move, and I'm proud that last week Congressman Chris Collins from New York, a Republican and a former small businessman himself, signed on to our bill, giving it exponentially greater chance of moving forward in the Congress. And so I'm hoping that we can continue to realize in the Congress that innovation and investing in policies that create jobs and grow the economy should not know any political party. With respect to the Bay Planning Coalition, I also wanted to just update you on other opportunities that I see in the Congress to expand and open up our trade routes. And we know that our ports have the opportunity to open trading opportunities with global markets, and the federal government, again, we don't want them standing in the way so that people can buy our iPhones, our 3D printers made in America, and our computers. But without regular dredging, our channels are getting narrower and narrower. Our ships have to light load. In fact, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recently reported that almost 30% of commercial vessel calls at U.S. ports are constrained due to inadequate channel depths. That's why I'm a supporter and have co-signed on to H.R. 335, the Realize America's Maritime Promise, or the RAMP Act. This bipartisan legislation guarantees funding for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, and that the sole purpose of it is for dredging and maintaining our waterways. Also, I know Senator Boxer talked about WRDA, and I'm a supporter of Senator Boxer's efforts to make sure it's fully funded, something that has not happened since 2007, and I will continue to work with my colleagues in the Bay Area delegation to do that. Finally, I want to close with what has been probably the highlight of my first 100 days in the U.S. Congress, and it actually came out of congressional orientation. Believe it or not, they actually send members of Congress to orientation, and it did feel a little bit like college orientation without the bunk beds, but they send us to congressional orientation 4 weeks, 2 weeks in Washington, D.C., a week in Williamsburg, Virginia, and a week at Harvard University. And my parents were actually more excited that I had gotten into Harvard University than that I was elected to the United States Congress. My mom was telling all of her colleagues, and she was very happy. And unfortunately, I did not leave with a diploma, but I did leave with new friends, and new friends from across the aisle. At the Harvard lecture, which was in a room like this with 85 new members of Congress, we had a speech that was given to us by Peter Orszag, the president's former director of the Office of Management and Budget. And Mr. Orszag told us that if the 113th Congress behaved like the 112th and continued to spiral out of control, demonize each other as far as one party blaming the other for inactivity, that financial markets would collapse, debt and deficit would grow larger, and the American people would ultimately be the victim. Well, that grabbed me, and it grabbed my colleagues. And so about 5 to 6 of us got together after that speech. We sat down in a room in a hotel lobby. We talked about what we could do to come together and meet Mr. Orszag's challenge. And so what we did was week after week after week, we would meet and we would grow the group. We were each responsible for bringing more and more people in. Pretty soon we found that we needed to move out of individual members' offices to conference rooms in the Capitol. And one week the Republican would host it, the next week the Democrat would host it. And the group got bigger and bigger. And I found a couple things, and I realized a couple things from these meetings. First, many of the stereotypes that I had about Republicans were absolutely not true. They were just off. They were fed by 24-hour news cycle and some of these cable TV shows that feed into the partisanship. They were fed and influenced by campaign ads in October and November. But when I was in that room with other Republicans, I found that a lot of those beliefs were just not true. And they found out the same thing about us. We also found that when staff was not in the room, and sorry, Josh from my staff is here. When staff was not in the room, we were actually able to agree on a lot. And then we'd go back and tell our staff what we agreed on, and they would say, oh, you can't do that. You can't agree to that. We would bicker and argue in that room about different policy points as we tried to issue a letter of what we could agree on. And I stopped the group a couple times, and so did other members, and I said, we may not agree on this particular policy point, but what's more important than any specific point we can agree on is the fact that at this moment, we have over 20 members of Congress from each party sitting in a room talking to each other, listening to each other, respecting each other. And we certainly had not seen that in the past. So we issued a letter that we all signed, 500 words. You can imagine, with half the group being lawyers, how hard it was to agree on 500 words. We issued the letter. We had a press conference on Valentine's Day. It wasn't planned, but I thought that was a symbolic day to have a press conference. Today, the group now has 30 members of the freshman class, about evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. We still meet once a week, and we're hoping that we can produce our first bill very soon. I'm not naive. I know that overnight it's not going to change the course of Congress, but I do think it takes a snowball to start an avalanche. And I think this is one positive step forward to ending the gridlock in Washington, D.C., because we respect and trust each other. And the next time I get talking points to go on the House floor and say something negative about the other party, it makes me think twice. Because I know that the next week I'm going to have to sit down in the same room with members from the other party and look them in the eye and try and agree on something. So that's been encouraging for me. I hope it's encouraging to the American people and all of the doors that I knocked on, where people, the number one issue I heard as far as what their concerns were with the federal government were not Social Security or jobs or economy. More than any issue I heard, why can't Congress just get along? So the freshman class is trying, and I hope it's not in vain, and I hope it starts to produce results very shortly. If we have time, John, I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Does anyone have any questions about the first 100 days or what the next 100 might bring? Yes, Jill. Yeah. The question was, the freshman class, what seems to be the number one issue? And I have to say, I do agree that economic development, creating jobs here at home, seems to be the number one issue. Now, there's different approaches as to how we get there. And one of the approaches has just been cut spending, but not provide any new sources of revenue. And so, it's been hard on that front. I think it takes a balance of spending cuts and also bringing in new sources of revenue. But that seems to be a unifying concern, but now we have to find a unifying solution. Another question. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I have a question, but first, I just want to applaud your efforts to get that group together and talk.
Thank you.
My question is, are they all freshmen?
They are all freshmen. And I was on Willie Brown's CBS show this morning. It was at Dark 30. It's 6:30 in San Francisco. And he was very, very energized for being so early. And when I was telling Willie about this, Willie said to me, he said, "So who's the spy in the room for the leadership?" It was a good question. And I told Willie, I said, actually, at least on the Democratic side, we were encouraged by leadership to do this. So it's all freshman members. There's 85 members of Congress. Our group, which we call ourselves the United Solutions Caucus, we're 30 members and growing. And we see at every meeting new members coming in to just see if this is something they would like to join. Other questions? Other questions? Yes. Assemblymember Quirk. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, we of course have the opposite balance in Sacramento, but the Republicans who want to govern are doing the same thing that Eric is doing. They're reaching across the aisle. I'm more than happy to work with them. This is how to get things done. Thank you very much, Eric Swalwell.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill and I have the same background. We both were former city council members, and as you know, our city councils are nonpartisan, but we still have members from the other party on our councils, and so that, I think, was positive for me to come from that environment. I was also raised by two Republicans, so if I wanted anything done at home, I had to reach across the table to get the peas passed. So, any other questions in the room? Well, yes.
Sure. A little off topic, but taxes, and the senator talked about transportation. You've got a unique district going out to Livermore and coming, from this side all the way out. And part of that is interesting in my mind because we have the half-cent sales tax go up to 1%. Some of your citizens were actually opposed to that, and actually the lowest of participation or approval was out there. How are you going to bridge that? Because at some point we're going to need additional taxes for transportation. And how are you working amongst your district? Because that could be a microcosm for the nation.
Jim, it's a great question. Jim's referring to Measure B1, which failed by just about 700 votes, and I was a strong advocate for Measure B1. I wish I was not as preoccupied as I was in my own race, but Jim's right. The Tri-Valley essentially defeated Measure B1. It lost every single precinct in Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore except for one. And there's a lot of different reasons or speculation about why that happened, but I will just offer this observation. I knocked on over 100,000 doors in my last campaign, and I did about 20. My campaign knocked on over 100,000. I did over 20,000 myself, and not at one door did a single voter ask me about Measure B1. So what I would gather is that if you don't tell people why it's so important to them, bringing BART to Livermore, improving our roadways, making complete streets for our pedestrians and bicyclists. If we don't tell the voters how it's going to benefit them, there are some parts of the district where I think reflexively people will just vote no on any new sales tax. What I am looking forward to is that if we can bring it back in 2016, that I'll be in a position where B1 will be all of my efforts, and we can take all of our supporters that have helped me so far and show why it's so important, and that we pass it by not just one vote, but that we pass it by thousands of votes. Any other questions? Yes?
Thank you for your support of the RAMP Act. And I know Barbara is trying to do something similar, but not quite the same. But we still like the RAMP Act. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts, having been the first 100 days, on where the House is on the RAMP Act? I mean, we made a good go for it, and then last year it didn't happen. Now we got a new one. Any thoughts and your advice on how we keep pushing it?
Unfortunately, what we're seeing in the House right now is that nothing significant is moving anywhere. And it seems to be the strategy of the leadership, the House Republican leadership, is that they do not want to move anything until anything significant until we have what they call a grand bargain on Social Security, Medicare, and our deficit. And I think that's too bad. That hurts, as we know, a transportation bill from being passed. We're going to be in reauthorization of a transportation bill in about a year. It hurts the RAMP Act. It hurts other programs that need attention. All of these programs are being crowded out because we are now in what I call this era of incremental government, where we govern by crisis. Every 2 to 3 months, we're told we need to increase the debt ceiling, or we need to reduce our spending, or that we need to pass these sequester cuts. So it's unfortunate, because I think that you can cut foolish spending without just foolishly cutting spending across the board the way that we have, but that requires going back to our United Solutions Caucus, us sitting down and being able to work together to do this. But it shouldn't affect the RAMP Act, but unfortunately, just like in the last Congress, it has. Yes?
Maybe it's be explained by ignorance of how things work in Congress, but I'm curious, how do you get to be ranking member of a subcommittee in 5 days?
It's a good question, one that I was hoping would not be asked. How do you become ranking member of a subcommittee is just a freshman? Well, the short answer is that I had the support of California members on that subcommittee. There was an election for it. That committee represents and funds many projects at Lawrence Livermore and Sandia Laboratories, which are in our district. And so I had the support from leadership to do that. But actually, there was a technical reason that put me in that position. In the House rules, you can only serve as a ranking member of one subcommittee. So the people who would have been more senior to me had been ranking members on other subcommittees. so it came to me. It still had to be up for election. I had to run against another member of Congress who was more senior to me, who wanted it. But because so many other members did not qualify for it under the House rules, it made that pool of who I had to run against smaller. Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And please see us as a resource.